So, hi everyone. It's Martin from Agile Labs, and we have Clarke with us, who was kind enough to share some knowledge with us today or tonight for some. So, Clarke, the floor is yours.
Okay, so hello, good morning, good evening. I am Clarke Ching. Just so I'm sure you've already know this, I wrote that comes up, Rolling Rocks Downhill, the Bottleneck Rules, and some other stuff which I can't find on my desk at the moment. But I am a theory of constraints guy from a long way back. I'm also a computer scientist from even longer way back. And only for the last 20 years have I been doing agile stuff. So I'm TOC, and I built the work I do these days. I built up from combining those areas: software development, TOC, and agile. But I'm unusual, I think, that with most people, in that I came to agile after learning TOC. So I'm just going to share some stuff that came out of the theory of constraints world, which will be useful. It's just so interesting, the stuff. At least I think it is. I hope you guys find the same. So this is, I've called this Don't Dilute Delivery. And excuse me, there was a thing that on my screen when I was looking at it before, that picture there actually looked very blurry. But then when I shrunk it down, it looked a lot cleaner. But for some reason, which I cannot explain, on this screen, it didn't look blurry on the first one. So I just wanted to demonstrate the difficulty with dilution, which is that when you have a big picture, it gets a lot blurrier. If you have the same amount of information, when you try and spread it more thinly, it becomes blurry. But when you intensify it, it becomes richer and better. It doesn't work very well because on my screen, it's actually the first picture doesn't look blurry now, and I have no idea what the computers have done to me. So sorry about that. So we will move on. And I want to tell you a little bit. I was asked if I could give you a little bit of info on what I call the Thrive model, which is from my ATM method. So the Agile TOC method, Agile Theory of Constraints, the method. And it comes out nicely. And I'm not sure what you guys in Poland would refer to as an ATM, a money machine. I'm not sure if it's the same. It is? Cool. I know in some places around the world, they have different names. And when I lived in the UK, a lot of people used to refer to them as a hole in the wall. But this is actually it is a coincidence that it happens to be ATM, but it is actually a big part of this is about making money. But if you can have a little look at that diagram, it's not actually all about making money. It's actually about creating a thriving workplace. And there are three things that I'm trying to get to that. One of them is about money specifically, which is the snowballing profits. See inside the little heart shape there in the middle? Thriving workplace, snowballing profits. Now, the word snowballing has a very specific meaning, but it would take too long here to explain it. But we just want the profits to get bigger and bigger and bigger, like a snowball does as it rolls downhill. So it's about making more money. But I don't actually really care about the money, apart from the fact that I've worked in places that suddenly ran out of it. And I've helped companies that have suddenly run out of money. And it's not a very nice place to be. So one of the necessary conditions of having a thriving workplace is actually making money. And if you ever want to, a really interesting way of looking at this is that next year's culture is this year's, as a result, partly or largely of, next year's culture is a result of this year's profits. This year's culture is a result of last year's profits. If the business you work in had a really bad last year and suddenly gone into a scarcity mindset and is laying off people, your culture this year is not going to be so healthy. And you see a lot of companies around the world at the moment are laying off people as they're trying to prep for that. So snowballing profits it contributes to having a really nice workplace. Lack of profits leads to an unpleasant workplace oftentimes, but not always. There's two other bits in part of this. One is the productive buzz. So if you think of it, outside, we're just coming to autumn, but a couple of months ago, just outside my window over here, there's this big, lovely native New Zealand tree there. And in the summer, it's buzzing with the productivity sound of bees buzzing, harvesting, making their honey. And so I like the idea that the sense that sort of visceral kind of real feeling of a productive buzz. And you can walk into a place and you can tell the difference between an angry buzz where everyone's bitching and moaning and complaining and fighting with each other, and a productive buzz. We can tell it. I'm sure you've all walked in to places that are doing agile and they've got whiteboards and a lot of activity around, but you can tell just watching and listening a little bit to the quality of the buzz that goes on, how productive they actually are. And the last one is that surprises people, but collective calm. I tell you, those companies, if you want to imagine a lack of collective calm, imagine Elon Musk has just bought your company for a few billion dollars, and you don't know what's going to happen next. The lack of calm robs companies of productivity. It just puts people in a scarcity, competitive, protective spot. So those three things there for me are really, really important. And that's what I'm trying to get out of my work. And I want to point out really, again, it's not just about the money. So it's called the ATM method, but it's not about the money, but it's a really good way of making money. And there are three parts to that. And I won't go into huge detail on all of these, but you can see them in front of you. The one in blue, turbocharged delivery. Basically, notice the T and the O and the C in the middle of it are rather cleverly capitalized. That's because it's about adding the bottleneck stuff from the goal or from the bottleneck rules onto existing agile teams. So it's you take an existing team and then you add the stuff on. Much of that work has already been done, but there's a problem if you take the classic approach to TOC, which you may have read about in this wonderful but very dated book now. If you just take that the classic approach, you'll end up probably with the bottleneck in the wrong place, which is why in the top left-hand corner in the blue, the first thing that we try and do is right place the bottleneck. And to do that, it's really surprising. I don't have time to go into it here, but most organizations think their bottleneck is developers, but actually their problem is that they have too many developers and not enough other people wrapped around them. Probably 70-80% of organizations have too many developers, but they're all very busy doing rework that could have been prevented if they had more capacity in all the other roles around them. And the other bit about right placing the bottleneck is that the first place that you actually start these days, if you've got a good agile team that's already working well, is that you expand your view of what the team is and make sure that you get your senior managers and your customer, whoever that might be, your head of marketing, your sponsor, whatever word you use for that, your head of product, and you make sure that they are not the bottleneck. Because so many teams are running with quite effective, efficient, agile processes, but they're kind of heading in the wrong direction because they don't have enough time from the decision makers, the big cheese sits upstream of them and above them in the hierarchy. Okay, so that's right place the bottleneck, curate the cache. It's just it's just really, if you just think of curation as the process that in a museum, just imagine you have a museum and you are the curator. That's your job in the museum. Your job is to decide of all of the stuff that you have down in the basement that's hidden away from public view, what you bring out and put in the scarce public space. So when we add the bottleneck thinking on, we are trying to make sure that deliberately our developers are the bottleneck. And so we can determine a lot of that by curating what work comes through and in what order. And just to make it really simple, if you've got work that takes a lot of bottleneck time, a lot of development time, and it takes very little of other people's time, you're going to go much slower than if you found a solution to that piece of work or an alternative piece of work with equivalent value, and chose to do them instead and freed up bottleneck time. Okay, synchronize the system is in fact what we're going to talk about today. And now if I just pop to the left, now I know that the word projects triggers some people, and I don't want to cause any backlash here. I don't want to get cancelled, but projects are wonderful if you have something that needs to be delivered that's really important and very valuable, and time is really important. So if you have something that you need to deliver in December because it's got to be live before Christmas, the value to an organization diminishes enormously if it delivers in March. If you have stuff that has to be done before the end of the financial year and you miss that date, you've got all sorts of problems. So dates are important, but not on everything. So this is for really important projects. We've got 3 things that we do, and they all build on the existing Agile mechanism. So dollarize a price is just to say, hey, look, what are we chasing? And it's really surprising how often when you look at dollarizing the prize and you go, what are we chasing? What are the financial benefits here? Whether it be a for-profit, for a not-for-profit, a hospital. Once you look at what you're actually chasing, it's really surprising because often the people who are executing a project, so many times it's happened. You go in and go, what are you actually chasing? And they're chasing something entirely sort of tangentially related to what the sponsors, the people who are investing in this, are actually chasing. So clarifying that gets much, much better decision making. Inverting the pyramid is just the idea that just like a newspaper writes its most important stuff at the top of an article and then it decreases in value, each paragraph, so that they can chop it off at any stage and always get a complete article that's valuable. That's effectively the Agile, that's the Agile 101 for project management. That's what we do. We prioritize, and it gives us huge flexibility for delivering on time or early. And stack the deck is just saying, hey, look, set up your project. Cheat. It's like cheating. If you stack the deck when you're playing cards, you're trying to cheat so that you can win. When we stack the deck in projects, we set them up, not just the projects, but the teams, everything. We set them up so that they can win. And there's one of the most obvious things to do is if there's something that's risky, but it's important, imagine you want to land it like an aeroplane in bad weather at the beginning of the runway, at the beginning of a project, so that you find out if the risk is real, and you can mitigate it early when there's far less stress and it's far cheaper, rather than landing it midway through the runway where you've got a lot less wiggle room there. So that's that. The quiet change stuff on the right there. It's really, if you were to sum up the theory of constraints in one word, it would be focus. So what we do is scalpel-like change. We look and we very carefully, we think through things, and then we try and make a small scalpel-like incision, like a surgeon, rather than the scattergun, the shotgun kind of boom, boom, boom. We're very focused, trying to cause change to happen, but very, very quietly. And there's 3 things that are part of that. One is to pick your battles, which is like, if you think of the Agile approach, generally is do the most important stuff first, mitigate risk first, get value first, all that good stuff. It's the same with change. Agile, if you extract it away from software development, it's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful mechanism for picking your battles and delivering change incrementally over time, not boiling the ocean. Building the trust is kind of like the most fundamental part of this whole thing. And I have to recommend this book, The Trusted Advisor, anything by them. Trust is invisible, but when you learn to see it, you suddenly see how the lack of it causes an enormous amount of waste and stress and unhappiness. Trusted Advisor is how to is a hugely useful book for just untangling trust. So in the work I do one-to-one mentoring with managers and executives and so on, that's usually where I start, is the trust stuff. For me, they have to trust me. That's really important. But for them, I kind of teach them how to cause change to happen in a nice, quiet way that's built on building trust. And if you just like a little metaphor to think about that, imagine you're walking on the street and you find a cat, and the cat's sitting there, assuming that you like cats, and the cat's looking up at you. If you go and try and rub it on the belly, straight up there, it's either going to run away, or it's going to grab your with your claws, because it's not it doesn't trust you yet. So you reach out your hand gently, let the cat sniff your hand, and then maybe scratch it under the chin or and you build trust just slowly. And then maybe the next time you go out for a walk, it's there, and it's you're already coming at it with a higher level of trust. So trust is really important, and it's very, very closely tied to the last one, which is sidestep the resistance. Okay, so we often do things in our world that is right for us. We go and we sell solutions, all these wonderful things, and that just gets people to go. So we need to be clever and just sidestep the resistance, just avoid it. So pick the battles, build the trust, and sidestep the resistance. Those three together go really well. Okay, now I've got 3 examples here of synchronizing the system. Okay, so this is about synchronizing. But notice here, there's 3 words that begin with S: siloing, synchronizing, and synergy. What's interesting is that they actually happen in that order. That teams and people and organizations naturally tend to silo. A lot of the work that we do is about synchronizing them, getting them talking to each other. And then once they've synchronized, but not until they're actually talking to each other, they start to synergize. And just in case, the word synergize is where you get 1 plus 1, and you add them up and they become 3. And you can't do that if you've got 2 teams that are separate. There's one over here, there's one over here. They're not talking. It's only when they talk that the incredible mathematics of synchronization gives you 1 plus 1 equals 3. So that's what we're aiming for. So let me just a little example that happened probably maybe 6-8 weeks ago. I was talking to one of my clients, and he described something he'd done. He's very proud of it. He's working across two quite big, well-established teams that have been working together for ages. Team A and Team B, we will call them, and they were kind of related to each other in that Team B did some work for Team A, and it would sometimes Team A would ask them to do some work, and then what would happen is that they would come back a few weeks later and say, "Hey, how's that work done?" They go, "Oh, we forgot to do that." And then all of a sudden, Team B is rushing and panicking because they've got Team A moaning about them because they got 3 weeks worth of work there that they're supposed to done, or it's run late, or it wasn't prioritized. And the problem was really that they were just acting like silos, right? Really, really kind of old school. They were just 2 silos. And so Aaron, the guy that I was coaching, he said to me, So what I did is I set up a few short, regular catch-ups. So this is really, really obvious, isn't it? It's really obvious. They're not talking, just get them talking. So we set up a couple of catch-ups, and suddenly they just started chatting, and they started coordinating with each other, and they stopped surprising each other and getting angry with each other just for the sake of a few tiny little catch-ups. Now, I want to point out something that's really not obvious here, but it's starting, I think, when you realize it, which is that we silo naturally. It's far easier to silo. So a lot of the work that people like us do is get people unsiloing, get them synchronizing, and we get them talking. And we set up things in a way, ideally, that's really easy for them to just have a few little chats and catch up and coordinate with each other. So I hope you like my animation here. I've got a grid. This is pretty cool. Now, there's whole lots of levels going on. We silo as individuals. We silo as teams. We silo, we silo inside a team. We silo all the way up. We silo between organizations. Even when we're working closely together, they silo. And all he did is at the team level, he just moved them from siloing, added a few little chats that were very, very inexpensive and actually quite pleasurable for them to do once they built a little bit of trust, and he got them synchronizing. But then there's another bit that comes after that, which is the synergy. So this is where I was able, he come in and just was chatting about, he's really proud of this. I said, okay, what happens next? And I explained the concept of synergy, and he goes, "Oh yeah, I knew that." And I go, "Okay, you've got them chatting. Now, how do you get them bouncing their ideas off each other nicely and being creative and clever and get synergy?" And he just well, the first thing was to make sure they keep chatting, and the next bit was a little bit of facilitation skills. But the synchronization was a really good first step, making sure that they synergize. That's where the magic happens. So if you think about the synchronization like a drum beat, da-dum, 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 it sets a rhythm, it gets people chatting, and it keeps them in sync with each other. And in the theory of constraints, the manufacturing stuff has this thing called drum buffer rope, and the drum is this drum beat of a factory working. Now, when you get synergy, I just love playing with words, so this makes me very happy. You get a heartbeat. You get the heartbeat. You bring the humanity into it, and you get the magic when clever people start talking to each other. You know, it's the difference between administration and collaboration. Okay. So a few regular catch-ups. Now, if I can just really quickly imagine here, if I had a chat, I'll get you to type this in, so I'll just talk it instead. Just imagine what the before and after was like, say 1 week after they started chatting, and then a month after, and then 3 months after. Can you imagine if that chatting was kept happening and they made sure that they did it in a nice way so that they didn't silo further and end up hating each other? Can you just imagine how it would have, the productive buzz? Can you imagine the tone of the conversations that would be having would be bzz, it would be good, it would feel good. You could walk past and tell that you had colleagues working together rather than people arguing with each other, collaborating. Can you imagine, so we've got productive budget. Can you imagine how much calmer it was when Team A called up, just said, "Hey, how's that going?" Now, just you said yesterday when we spoke, you probably have it this afternoon. They go, "Oh, we'll have it this afternoon," rather than, "How's that going?" Oh, we're halfway through it. We'll get back to you. And then suddenly all of the panic. So that the calmness is there, and their productivity shot up, and they started, both of those teams started shipping a lot more, just because it was just so much more productive and calm. So that was one. This one, switching on and switching off. I think when I wrote the title, this was a kind of like a little power related joke. See the power here? Now turn it back on. Ta-da! This was when I worked in this building here in General Electric. I actually tried to hide it, but then I realized you can actually look closely and see it's General Electric. And we built, or everyone else built software that distributes the power, the distribution centers and power companies use it all around the world. So it was a big, high ticket item there. And so they switched on and they switched off, but there was also actually a switching problem. They got me in there after they basically switched over from big, disastrous, sort of like Microsoft Windows kind of style projects that take 3 years, and then they spend the next 3 years fixing all the bugs. They switched over to Agile after having given everyone a 2-day Scrum Master course. So it was like a massive switch. And as you can imagine, it was really unpleasant and difficult and stressful, didn't work very well. So they got me in to help them out. And when I went in, they'd already put some stuff in, really good people. So it's just that the switch was kind of a bit optimistic. So now, can you just imagine here, this is what was going on when we dug in, and this is kind of like the immediate problem that was going on. On Monday, a project manager messages a developer and said, "Are you there?" "Yep." "What are you working on?" "Customer one's work." "Oh, great. That's really good. When will it be finished?" You know, it's like the kids in the back of the car. "Are we there yet?" "When will it be finished?" "I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 days." "All right. Okay," says the PM. "And then I need you to switch to customer two's work. They're hassling me. It's really, really urgent, and they are threatening to call the CEO. So please, just and the dev says, "Well, you sure? Because it only take me a couple of days to finish this, and it'll take me at least half a day to switch out this stuff, move it over there, and then reset my development environment and so on, and then started again. And then when I switched back to venture, it's going to cost me another half a day. And the PM says, of course, I'm sure I wouldn't have asked otherwise, would I? And then the dev does that. I imagine that probably sounds familiar. Hopefully less so these days, but this, I'm not exaggerating this, by the way. This was probably worse than this. On Wednesday, the PM says, hey, are you there? And the developer says, yeah. And what are you working on? Customer two's work, of course. Great. When will it be finished? Oh, a couple of days. Yeah. And the PM says, okay, but I need you really urgently to switch to project three's work, customer three's work. And then you can imagine. And of course, they just switched to customer three. And then eventually over time, the developer stopped talking back because, it's just like, okay, just do as I told. And then on Friday, they need them to switch to customer one's work because it's urgent. And so they spend all this time talking. Now, so you've got this, you've probably participated in something like that at some stage in your working life. Now, a picture of a tangled up net and a lady who knows how to untangle this net because she's done it thousands of times in her life. Okay, problems are like that. Interesting thing about the team A, the team A, team B, the very first example that I talked about, where they just started chatting, they'd been running like that for 3 or 4 years and never thought to actually have a conversation. No one had looked at it and untangled things until Aaron came in. Same thing here. Now, but what I did is I came in and I talked to people. And it's obvious, if you know this stuff, it's obvious. But I needed to build trust, and I needed to make small steps, and I needed to be able to help them fix things without them thinking of me as the arrogant, agile, blah blah blah, who's come in to tell them that they're all stupid. So I sat down and I got some of the leaders there, the technical leaders, and I got them down and we just did this thing here, and I've deliberately blurred it because it's probably a load of rubbish, but this is the real thing we actually produced. We sat down and produced a thing called a current reality tree, which is a theory of constraints tool that Ellie Goldratt introduced in this book, and it's really good for untangling all the cause and effects. If you can imagine all of those diagrams and boxes there, all being jumbled up like that net, what we did is we went in, we looked and we untangled all the cause and effect, and we figured out what was going on. And it was mostly for them and to clarify it, but we also got numbers, which was really useful because if you want to change stuff, it's useful to have some sense of numbers. So see that one there? This was a conclusion. And they go, it's sort of like they go, whoa, the domain experts, by which I mean all the developers, were losing up to 2 days each week due to these interruptions. Moving the stuff away. I'm so far away from development these days. Moving the stuff away and then moving it back. I used to know what that was. I used to be able to do it. Doesn't matter. So 2 days out of 5, that's a 40% productivity loss, up to 40% productivity loss. And it had been this way for years and everyone just took it. And this is bizarrely a company that was huge on Six Sigma, and everyone had to do Six Sigma projects where they saved millions of dollars by, no, I'm not going to go down that road. No one picked this up, and it was a huge productivity thing. So the solution is pretty obvious. I'm sure as you're sitting there, you go, oh, I know what we could do. I know what we could do. You come up with a bunch of really clever ideas already. I'll just tell you what I did. We put in a choking mechanism, which is what rhymes with bottleneck. I didn't use this term there, but if you think bottleneck, a throttle neck. So it's something that just chokes the release of work into a system. So it's like a bottleneck, except it's deliberate, and it just slows down. It slows down the starting of stuff so that we can limit WIP and focusing on finishing stuff. Okay, really obvious. And you can all just figure out all of the other stuff that we do, but it just required a little bit of synchronization at the start to make sure that people were able to just go, I'll get to customer 2 stuff in 2 days, I promise. And we did that. And it was just really, really effective. Agile actually made it easy. Having backlogs just made it easy. They just needed to concentrate not on all the Agile stuff that was obvious. It was on the release of stuff in. But we also had to do a bit of a sales job. So just let me run through this really quickly here, because this stuff works so much better when you put dollar signs or euro signs or even pound signs in front of it to get people to realize what's going on. So just think of, so we thought it was 2 days a week. That they thought, actually, I didn't have an opinion, but they reckoned it was easily up to 2 days a week. So we just thought, what if we just rounded it down to 1 day a week? Because there's one thing that's really interesting about the TOC stuff here. And Ellie told me this. He told me that in this book, if you've read it, the numbers were lies because he had to play them down enormously. And if you read through the logic, you go, surely they must have made much more money than that than they had in the book. But he put lies in there because it was impossible for anyone to believe the results until they actually saw them. They would just dismiss them as a snake oil salesman. So we rounded down the numbers and just assumed it was 1 day a week, so 20% waste, which is pretty enormous still. 4 value added days out of every 5, 1 waste a day every week. And we're underselling to sound plausible. And then we just ran through, what if we eliminated the waste a day? And the value added days would go up from 4 to 5, cool, which is a 25% increase in productivity. Okay, that's not bad. That was quite convincing. And look, even if you chop this down, said it was half a day a week, it's still enormous. The amount of improvement you could actually get, especially when you turn it into dollars. Move it away from 25% and stuff like that, which all sound made up, which they were. And they had about 100 developers. So just translate that. So that was like being given another 25 developers for free, just by getting rid of the waste. And that was such an easy kind of sell. It's like, okay. But there's another way of looking at it. So the way I've just described is the cost focus. You go, okay, that will save us money. But this is a business that's not in the business of saving money. It's in the business of making money. But if we put that 25 developers, say for free, and we say that you earn 50K a year, that's £1.25 million a year, something like that, which is, is reasonable money. But what if they used that money instead to make money? What if they said, we've got the equivalent of 25 developers extra here. What can we do and what can we sell? How can we use it to make money? So not a cost focus, it's a making money focus. And when you look at the original book, the goal in the book that companies have that clarified is that we're not in the business of saving money or doing technology or all that. We're in the business of making money or snowballing profits, to use my term. I don't know what it saved, what money they made from this, but I do know that it stopped them from being sold and basically mothballed. And because the company had already bought a competitor at this stage, and they were replacing this one. No one knew it. I didn't know it. But when we did this stuff and some other stuff that went with it, suddenly the profits soared, the cash flow just shot up, and this thing became a cash cow. So don't think of how much money you save. Think of what you can do with the extra capacity. Right, racing through here. Now, this is the unfair cost of fairness. Again, it's about synchronization. All of these are about synchronization, and like that last point is a synergy. Sorry, no, I'm not going to go into details. Read at your fingertips. Now, normally I get you to do this. Years ago, I put out this little exercise in a popular internet magazine, Better Software. I don't know if it's still alive these days. It's a little game you can use to simulate and get people to feel like it's what it's like to switch. And as you can see from here, if you were going to imagine you had 3 projects at the A's, the ones, and then the Roman numerals. It's far easier to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, 1, 2, 3, 4, I, than it is to go A, 1, I. The actual mental cost of switching is quite expensive. You may have seen other versions of this. I'm pretty sure that the other versions that you've seen all bounced off mine, but I nicked the idea from people in the theory of constraints world that were there before me. So it's not an original idea. But let's do a little sneaky stuff here, because remember, we're here to making money. So I'm going to show you about the money stuff, and something that this will, you probably won't believe me when you see this, but there's no smoke and mirrors here. It's all it's all real. So let's say that if you had that there, right, that we had the blue resources, sorry, hang on. We had blue resources, green resources, and yellow resources. Who knows what they do? And each project in this wonderful little simulation, I'm going to show you 3 versions of it now, are all, I can't finish my sentence because I forgot how I started it. Okay, so we've got 3 projects, and each of those tasks take 2 weeks. They're done either blue, yellow, or green, but there's different ways that we could do these. Okay, but we also add a project manager who's going to coordinate for their own project. So we have one project manager for project 1, one project manager, different one for 2, and a different one for 3. And now let's just add some money to these to make it interesting and real, because that helps us prioritize. You know, obviously, this is the dollarized bit from the ATM model, dollarize the price. So project 1 earns them, it's a new product, 10 grand per week once it's live. Okay, cool. Project 2 saves $8,000 on postage. I first started doing this model, this stuff here, at least 12 years ago. So postage was an issue then. And in the project 3 is $5,000 because it saves support costs for some bug or something. Yeah, whatever, it's just numbers. But they're not all the same. Project 1 is clearly worth more once it goes live than project 2 or 3, and so on. So these are the benefits, or you can think of them as the cost of delaying, as a nice heuristic, a nice shortcut there. So this is the ideal scenario. There are no shared resources. So that means we have 3 blue, 3 yellow, and 3 green. So they're essentially independent of each other. And they just go along like that. Wouldn't that be lovely? Oh, that'd be so lovely. That'd be so much easier. The reality, of course, is that we don't ever have that kind of situation. Although if it was worth it, and we stacked the deck on all of these projects, maybe we would set the projects up so that it didn't share resources. Maybe, maybe not. This is a really good example here. Sorry, now I'll show you the second scenario, and this is actually the real world. This is the one that we should be doing, but we usually don't. Okay, so this is the non-diluted version. We only have 1 of each type of resource, but we still have 3 project managers, and the project managers want their projects to, yes, this is the thing, single tasking, non-diluted version. They want their projects to start immediately and to keep moving, right? But we also have a commercial manager. Let's just say that their job title is Bottleneck. Okay, there's someone here who's going to choke the release of projects. We're going to stagger the start of the projects in order to maximize cash flow, to make the most money. Okay, they're there because each of the individual project managers, you'll see in the third example, they have competing priorities. So they're going to sort this out. We'll call them a flow master or a throttle neck. And it looks like this. So blue starts on project 1, works on project 1 again, and then ABC, done, and then switches to project 2. Okay, fairly obvious. Yellow starts, blue carries on project 2. Hey, look, we've got 3 projects all going at the start now, but they've all staggered starting. And then project 1, totally intensely worked on, delivered in 20 weeks. The others take a bit longer because, you know, they started a bit later. And that's single tasking. Notice the cash flow here starts when each of the projects start. Now I'll come back and I'll compare the cash flow, but I need to show you in a moment what happens when we multitask, which is when we don't have the deliberate flow master slash throttle neck role who is choking the release of work and doing the synchronization work. Okay, so we take away the flow master, and then we say, hey, look, guys, you three grown-ups, you project managers, prioritize it amongst yourselves. And they're going to agree that they'll prioritize on the basis of fairness. They'll each have a shot of each of the resources, and they'll rotate week by week. And that actually sounds really fair. And if you think of the project managers, the difference in money to them doesn't make a difference. What makes a difference is that they've got their customers going, is it there yet? Is it there yet? Is it there yet? When will it be ready? And they are trying to fight. So they're trying to fight for their project so that they take away that stress of the customer going, is it there yet? So it looks like this. Blue works on project 1, then switches to project 2, then switches to project 3, back to 1, 2, 3, and all the time the project manager can tell their customer, each of those three can say, hey, yeah, we're just about to kick off, or we've already got progress there, we're partway through. They can update a chart. They've already got in their own little project plans something to show that this is how it's going to run. Everyone's feeling good because we're all making progress. And it's just really, really happy land. And then they carry on, and they finish, right? And there's a cash flow at the end when each of the projects finished. So I'm going to compare these here, and there's always, like, I believe it now, but it used to look like smoke and mirrors, but I promise you there's no smoke and mirrors. In the multitasking, which was the third option, the diluted one, project 1 took 48. And the no multitasking, which was the one before that, with the Bottleneck, it took 20 weeks. So 48 versus 20. And if you add up the money in that, 10K a week, the difference with those extra weeks is 280,000 imaginary dollars, right? Project 2, 50 weeks versus 28 weeks. Okay. And that's worth some imaginary number, 176,000 lost through fairness. And this one there, project 3, it started much later. Notice in the no multitasking, it started much later, but it still finished 16 weeks earlier. Okay. Now, when I used to show this and I hadn't seen it for a little bit, I used to have to go back every time I did these slides because I thought I'd made this stuff up. But none of this is made up. It's just focus. It's focus and not dilution. So that made 80,000. So if you look at those there, compare and contrast, 3 of them there, all with just a change in one role that's just deliberately synchronizing the projects for the purpose of maximizing cash flow. So they all finish earlier, and they made 536 imaginary dollars more when they didn't multitask. And yet the funny thing is, if you ask the two people, if you in these imaginary worlds, in the multitasking world, it felt busier, it felt more stressful, and everyone felt more productive. And the no multitasking, it was calm. It was calm, collectively calm. If you remember the ATM model, it was calm. There was no arguments about stuff because you had a commercial manager who was prioritizing. But the busy world of the multitasking world, they lost their cost of delay. Effectively, the actual cost of imaginary dollars was 536 lost forever. Okay. Now, nearly there. So the first step of this, right, is to realize you actually have a problem. And the problem with this one here is that almost everyone in an organization is focused on their own silo. So the project, the people working on the projects, the 3 resources, they're just doing what they're told. They get told to do this. I'll do this. I'll do this. I'll do a good job of the coding or whatever that it happens to be. But lift it up a level. You've got the project managers, and they are all protecting and optimizing, doing the best job they can around the project management. When we lift it up a level, it's only when we lift up that level to the enterprise level of looking at all of the projects, the multi-project view, that we can actually see it. But most organizations, they don't have anyone at that level, so they can't see it. And they look around and they go, everyone's busy. So they don't actually even realize they have a problem. And the second step is to decide whether it's worth fixing. So that's why if you're looking at this stuff and you're in your real world there, go and dollarize the price. Don't try and come up with real numbers. Come up with really approximate, close enough numbers, just so that you can look and go, how much does it cost if we delay this for a month? And then round it down. I have this concept called a Clarkulator. I'm Clarke, and it's a Clarkulator, and it has all the buttons except the 1, 2, and 5, and the zeros taken off. So you can only start the numbers with 1, so 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, and you just do that. Just do that level. It's not precise. It's not, but it's accurate enough for the decision making, because that's what we want the numbers for. We're not doing accounting on this. We're doing decision making. Okay, so come up with a number that's just good enough to go, oh, that one there's 10,000 a month that we lose, and that one there's 300,000. That's information that we should use in our decision making and our prioritizing. Right, now there's one more thing here. One more thing. And again, it's tough. I've done these slides for ages. Like I presented these at conferences. I packaged them up, done them. And by the way, the original example was from a guy called Richard Zoltner, who was a TOC, or still is a TOC guru from way back. And I have stole his example and used it many, many times since. But there's something that I don't think was in his original paper. And someone pointed out to me after I've been using this example for, I don't know, maybe 6, 8 years. And his name was Andrew Ireland, and he come up to me, and Andrew said, "There's a problem with your slides." And he got to this slide here, and he said, "It's not complete." Okay, what do you mean? And he goes, "Well, look, what if you had project 4 there? What if you had project 5 there? Same people. Why don't you use that extra time to do 2 more projects?" And I felt stupid. As you can imagine, and it's so obvious, like so many clever things are just obvious. They're sitting right there in front of you. It's obvious, but yeah, we should do that. Okay, right, going to wrap up now. So we did this slide. Remember this one here. We get the synchronization from the drumbeat. And what we've done here is previously we were looking at the team level, and we just got a little bit of extra coordination, synchronization happening between the 2 teams. Now we've lifted it up and we're looking at an organization level, where there's multiple teams happening and multiple things going there. And again, we're just adding, and it doesn't come for free. It's like if you have a scrum team and you add a scrum master, you actually have to have someone to make sure that all of that scrummaging, whatever they call it, goes on. At this stuff, you need someone who's in charge of this. You need this throttle net role, someone who is sitting at the high level and going, how can we coordinate these things? How can we synchronize them to make them better? Okay. And sometimes it is just as simple as a few little extra catch-ups. But they're regular catch-ups, and it's just someone who's looking above optimizing at the organizational level rather than sub-optimizing at each of the team levels. Okay, so there's just this one other bit. Remember the synergize stuff. Everything I've talked about so far has been, now I'm just not sure if I press, okay, I just added this slide at 29 minutes past the hour before I dialed in. So I wasn't sure if I had the animation correct there. Okay, so the synergization happens. So the example I showed you is just really logical, boring, right? It's like a machine did it. The example itself was incredibly unrealistically, it was realistic, but it was just so simplified. But all we did is just put a mechanism in that made good decisions. Now, the really interesting bit is when we get those people working together, because now they're talking, and project A and project B and project C, they're all chatting, and they realize that they've got something in common that they didn't know about beforehand. And suddenly they can get a little bit of magic happening, but only because they've got their brains synergized and talking to each other. So I think that the bit for me about this is that the synchronization is the stuff that people like us are naturally really good at. You know, it's the mechanical stuff. And if you think of like the Agile Manifesto that talks about processes, people over processes, that's kind of the process. It's kind of the processy bit. But what's lovely, I don't think it's people over processes. I think it's both. But what's lovely here is when you get the synchronization in place, it enables you to get the magic, which is the synergy, which happens when people start bouncing ideas off each other and creatively collaborating and problem solving. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that last bit there, because there's a bit that's not on it, but it's the bit that if you could have an arrow that goes almost into everything here, and it's all built on trust, that diagram looks really quite mechanistic to my mind. That's a mechanistic, very neat and labeled out. Everything that happens to make this happen it only happens when you get people talking together and you get the synergy happening together. So like if you've got the big problem people seem to have with projects is that they get still there's someone up here imposes a date on them and then tries to get them to commit to all sort of stuff. We want to get them talking to each other, having grown up conversations, and that's the start of it. But the second bit that comes with it is that they creatively figure out how to make a better promise that's good for everyone. So every single thing on there is actually a conversation. And that's where the synergy happens, because that's what people are good at, and not robots or chat GTP kind of things. Right, I'm going to stop sharing. Hang on, now let me just check. Yeah, there you go. So don't dilute Agile. Don't dilute delivery. Okay. Now, I'm very happy to take questions. If I'd had the chat, I would have asked questions through the session, but we'll squeeze whatever, and I can talk whatever you want me to, or I can go away now if you're sick of me.
we are definitely not sick of you. So does anyone have any questions? Well, we still have Clarke online. If yes, just raise your hand and unmute and ask the question. And if not, maybe I will ask. So do you have any like a framework, like a way of doing this when you come to the company? They're like, I mean, the ideas that you had shown are like lots of different things that should be done, and there is only one of you. So what do you start with? What do you concentrate? What's your like feeling, or do you have a framework of, you know, seeing where to start?
I do. It's almost actually everything that I do. I suppose it comes from building trust, because you can't help people that and often I come in and I have to build trust with people. Just to think of that cat that's lying there. I can't come in and go, oh, Agile this and Kanban that, and you need this and this and this and this. You don't build trust that way. You come in and you sit down and go, what's up? What's bugging you? What problems do you have? And if you remember the diagram, the cause and effect diagram, the current reality tree, at the top of that tree, or most of the top of it, that's where we start. Goldratt called them UDIs, undesirable effects, but you could just think of them as symptoms. Just think, what are the symptoms? What's pissing you guys off? What's bugging you? Okay. And then you get a sense of that. And then there are a bunch of different techniques to get there. But I genuinely find that if you've done this stuff for a lot, it's just letting people talk about things. And then having a little bit of a thing go, oh, okay, where do you reckon we should start? And most of the conversations of helping people are actually letting them just brain dump all the stuff there. It's like getting getting the net out of the water, that lady with the net, getting the net out of the water and then just laying it out. And then you can suddenly look and start to see the problems. And then if you've been doing this, like all of you will know this experience, when you look at it, you can go, oh, I can see what's going on here. I can get a sense. I know the cause and effect, and I can feel it. And then you've got to go, oh, I've got a toolkit here and I've got an answer to all of these problems. But you don't want that. You don't want that, because all you do is you scare them away, oftentimes, and you'll boil the ocean, and you'll overwhelm people, and you'll cause resistance. So you just untangle it and talk through things a bit, and then you just go, okay, where do you reckon we should start? And you don't have to start in the right place, but the first conversation you'll start close to the right place, and then the second conversation you'll start to the next one. And so that does actually have a name, the model I use, but it's basically an agile model of helping people, given the belief that comes from the theory of constraint that at any one time there's really only one place you really kind of want to look. And I call it the FBI model, which sounds rather snazzy, but it's really straightforward. So F, B, I. So I'll tell you the I. You guys all know this one already. It's implement iteratively and incrementally. Okay, you guys all know that one. You're familiar with that that model of delivering software. So we deliver change. Okay, so that's the last step, and it's a repeating model, so it goes round and round. So the F is to focus, or if you prefer, it could be to find, or it could be to frame, or it could be to figure out where to start. So it's just going, look, we talked a bit, we got our sense, and we go, oh, I think we should go and maybe get some more information over there. Or maybe we need to get those two people chatting together and we could start there. Okay, so find or focus. And then the third step is deliver it, implement iteratively and incrementally. The B is to brainstorm. And this, I think, is the cleverest bit, because you guys and me, we've all got lots of like clever tools and things, but we've also got someone that we're helping who's got a really clever brain, and lots of clever brains around them. So once we focus them in on a problem, they focus in, and they go, oh, okay. So I've got a good bit of a sense of here. And then rather than coming up with a fancy framework or some technique or stuff, you just go, what do you reckon we should do about this? Why don't you guys just brainstorm, just brain dump a whole lot of silly things. And then what we'll do is, once we've got a bunch of ideas out, we'll just cherry pick one or two of them, maybe do half of one, all of another one, and then we'll just try them out and we'll implement them iteratively and incrementally. So the beauty of TOC is it gives you the idea that you can focus in. The beauty of Agile, which is the last step, is that you can implement iteratively and incrementally. But the brainstorming is lovely because it just effectively is kind of the equivalent of giving you a backlog of ideas, which you then go and slice and dice. You know, just imagine each of the ideas. So I'll give you an example. You can't see it, I think, no, you can't quite. I have a little barbecue around the corner here, and I brought it back from the UK when I moved back here 5 or 6 years ago. And New Zealand does a lot more, takes barbecuing a lot more seriously because, you know, we can. So we got this little barbecue. I thought I'm going to have my family around and have a barbecue. And now, so let me just play the FBI here. I go, oh, bugger, which would be typical exclamation from a New Zealander or an Australian. Oh, bugger. Barbecue's not going to be big enough. This little tiny barbecue. And then I go, oh, right, what do I do about that? And so instantly I brainstorm and go, oh, great, I've got an excuse to go and buy a really expensive barbecue. And then realistically, I go, oh, no, my wife's not going to let me do that. So I crossed that off the list and I go, oh, what else could I do? And so what I actually did in this case is I just thought, oh, for the entertainment of it, I'll go on Twitter and say, hey, look, got too many people, barbecue's too small, what could we do? And then Twitter brainstormed a whole bunch of ideas. Now, if the chat worked, I'll do this with you all here, but you all know, you're all thinking the same thing. Why don't you make sure there's plenty of salads? Why don't you maybe have the kids eat first, adults eat later, so you can do 2 different batches of barbecuing? Why don't you pre-cook some of the stuff and then heat it up? Why don't you ask your brother to bring his barbecue and then you have 2 barbecues as well? Why don't you go to and a whole lot of brainstorming things, and then you just look at it and you go, oh, okay, I've got a backlog of ideas here, slice and dice them, and then I'll implement them iteratively and incrementally. But by which I mean, I'll just do a few of them and just see if that solves the problem. And it did. So F for focus or find or figure out what problem we have. B, brainstorm bucket loads of ideas, some of them silly, some of them not. But that's getting that synergy. See that there? If I try and solve it by myself, I can come up with some ideas, get the synergy, get a whole bunch of other people come up with ideas. That's brilliant. And then just cherry pick some of them. And if I was doing this over and over for a one-off case, the iterative and incremental bit's not quite there. You just cherry pick some of them, go, oh, that'll be good enough. But if I was doing this over and over, I maybe pick the first two. And then if it wasn't good enough, the next barbecue I had, I maybe go back to my list that I brainstormed and cherry pick half of that one and half of that one. And I would next time encourage I wouldn't invite the big eaters, or, I would, so many things you do. So rather long question, but that FBI process is effectively, it's the most obvious way. And all I've done is just dress it up with words. But what we tend to do is go out and buy a big barbecue first and spend a lot of money rather than thinking.
Okay, does anyone have any question?
Is everyone hungry? Must be dinner.
It's too late to eat. I have one more. I mean, at my site it's 9:30, but in Poland it's 8:30. So I'm also not in Poland today. Clarke, one more question from me in that case, if no one else has any. So where do you get inspirations to test new stuff?
Oh,
what inspires
where do I get inspiration?
Yeah.
Oh, what inspires? That's a very interesting question. So I imagine, like most of you, I was born curious. I think you've all got the same affliction. If you've turned up for this, you've got that same affliction. It's a curse, but it's amazing, isn't it? So you again, I imagine all of you got the same thing. You go, I want to help people. I love ideas, and so I think for the first half of my career, I kind of acquired ideas. That's mostly what I did. Books. Nowadays you have videos and stuff, so that's where I got a lot of things. Then I realized, do you know what I mean by Pringles? The cans of.
Yeah.
They say you can't stop eating them once you open them. I about 12 years ago, I realized that I'd eaten too many Pringles. But what I mean by that is that I find that, when you eat Pringles, you go, oh, that first one is, it's magic. Or maybe not. Second one, you can still taste it. By the time and then you look up 10 minutes later and you look, I've eaten half of the tin, and I didn't notice that last lot, and I didn't even taste them. You go, and I realized that I was consuming information like that. And I was reading the latest Agile book, the latest Agile article, and I was really realizing that I was actually getting incrementally less and less and less value from them, because they all felt like they were new ideas, but they were really kind of mostly just building on stuff. And that's not to say that they were bad. It's just that I was full. So what I started doing is going much wider. I started going to different places to find new ideas. And a big part of that was a change in career for me when I moved from into actually more consulting rather than coaching. So it became a problem solving thing. And this is to get to actually where your answer is now. Where I get my inspiration these days is working with people and helping them solve their problems. That's where most, like, if you look at the three examples here I've given you, they're all kind of based on real life things. And so there's this really magical thing of actually not walking around with the toolkit and implementing some safe version, blah, blah, blah. That's a good job. But for coming up with new stuff, going out and actually figuring out what problems people are having, sitting around and then collaboratively helping them solve their problems. And that's where that synergy comes from. And that's where the little light bulbs pop up and you go, oh, wow. So the model I've just described here with the silo, synchronize, and then synergy, that genuinely didn't exist in my head, even though it's so obvious now to me, until about 6 weeks ago when I actually genuinely had that chat. All the other content here is old, but I put that in, and just suddenly I was talking to this guy and I go, oh, that's interesting because now you can synergize. And I realized then that there was, and then I realized that there were 3 stages, and I figured out 3 words that began with the same letter, of course. Silo, synchronize, and synergize. And then I'm now talking about it with different people, just testing that it actually feels like it kind of sticks and it works.
Yeah, it feels. Yeah. It feels like a flow, like stages of cooperation. Yeah, definitely.
I'm glad you said that. Yeah, because it's a good, again, it makes sense, but then it's the other bit, of course, is teasing it apart and finding the bits where it doesn't work. Yeah, good question. I found it fascinating. That's because I'm fascinating.
All right, we are already 8 minutes past the time. That I also see that people are are there. So Clarke, thanks a lot for joining us and presenting. And
it's really quickly. If anyone would like a copy of that book, just find me on LinkedIn. There's 2 Clarke Chings. There's only one that's called the Bottleneck guy, and I'll send you a PDF of that. It's if you want to be safe and sensible with your time, have a look at the reviews on Amazon. It's got, it has got genuinely really, really good reviews. I'd love for anyone to, if you want to read it, PDF will be on its way through LinkedIn. So just connect up. Here you go.
Okay, I will also send maybe a link to your profile in the message after we'll put the recording to YouTube.
Yeah.
So like together and with your message. So we'll do that.
Well, thank you very much for hosting me.
All right, thanks a lot. Enjoy the rest of the day, and for everyone else, enjoy the evening/night. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day.
Bye. Have a nice day.